Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to MFIC 2021. Once again, my name is Jihan Prasad,
And my name is Hui Mei.
and our topic for this event is driving innovation in the new normal. As we ponder upon the new possibilities of the new digital era, we at InfoConnect would like to turn ideas into reality. That being said, speaking to us about transforming your data management architecture to drive business innovations, let us introduce our next speaker.
Mr. Garrett Yap is the General Manager of DPI Technologies, which is a fully owned subsidiary of InfoConnect. He is widely known for his feats and responsibilities in analytics and data management solutions, and he has been with us for over 10 years, leading the area of analytics and data management solutions for the InfoConnect Group, not only in Malaysia, but also Indonesia and Thailand. Let us welcome Mr. Garrett.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the lovely introduction, Jihan, May. Okay, I'm going to present the topic as what May mentioned. Let me share my screen first. Right. Let me put this away. Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm given 30 minutes to talk about this particular topic, transforming the data management architecture to drive business innovations. Okay, I think we covered quite a fair bit yesterday in terms of the impact of COVID-19, but essentially I will bring it up, I can't resist it, because from the digital transformation perspective, right, the COVID-19 impact essentially have accelerated in various industries as far as digital transformation is concerned. Specifically in the area of digital services, of course, that in the interest of driving business revenue and containing costs. Right? So I think the engagement of advanced technologies to assist them in managing their costs and especially innovations to identify where the new market opportunities are and when and where to seize it, right? So now it's easy to say that I want to do an application to do cross-sell, upsell, but there are challenges in the way in digital success in terms of the overall architecture, especially in the area of the vast amount of data types available today, which is where my topic will focus on today, actually, right? And to get those applications to provide some maximum business value, right? It is not just about giving the providing business-ready data to the users to drive their decisions or to drive the analysis, but it is also about providing the right kind of business-ready data. So this is what I want to focus on today, right? And that's where the objective is all about. We'll talk about in terms of the unified data management platform, riding on top of a cloud-based for architecture modernization platform as well. So let's dive into it. Well, this is nothing new, but essentially is that this virus has actually caused disruption to 70% of a lot of businesses, the digitalization, you know, all this kind of stuff. But this pandemic essentially has escalated the implementation of digital reinvention by 5.3 years, 96% of them. Yeah. Now this is based on a study by IBM and McKinsey. So the problem is this, right? I think as I read yesterday, right, Equatorial Hotel in Penang, they're already closing, they're going to be closing their operations in March this year. You know, for me, it is quite sentimental because many years ago, before I joined BPI Technology and InfoConnect, I used to be handling the Penang operations where our office was based out in Equatorial Hotel. Now these are kind of impact that this pandemic is having on So now from a business perspective, right, even for ourselves, right, what are things that we need to do to increase revenue, to reduce our costs, right? How do I upsell my products and services to my customers, or how do I cross-sell them, right? And how do I automate, right, some of the customer offerings based on my analysis in terms of the customer behavior, customer demographics, and psychographics. And then along with it is, I won't say reduce costs, but manage costs, right? And in terms of customer experience, right, how do we ensure that customer is getting the kind of positive, engaging experience they're having with the seller? And insofar, depending on the industry you're in, you also want to be able to protect the privacy of the customer's information as well. So this kind of stuff, right, is actually driving or fueling the demand for advanced applications like predictive analytics, prescriptive analytics, right? Then we have the usual reporting analytics to track their performances, the indicators, right? And they want to inject AI function features into the applications like deep learning, the machine learning. All of these applications, right, have one thing in common. You need to bring all this data in. Now, this data may not be necessarily coming from one source. It can be coming from multiple sources or beyond the firewall of the organizations. So that's why today you hear like, I got structured data, I got the semi-structured data, I got unstructured data, all lumped together, got big data. And you want to bring this data in, right? It can be a data warehouse, it can be as small as a data mart or data lake to cater for the big data, right? And it also can be data virtualization as well. All of this, right, require data, and all of these applications that's being demanded of by business users to help them make decisions, right? And to help them create an impact on the business, right? So this is where the applications of such has a direct impact in terms of the creation of business value, right? It's not just for the fun of implementing predictive analytics, for example, right? There must be a business value tag to it, right? So, and this also has a direct impact in terms of the quality of the decision we make, right? And as a result of that, their go-to-market strategy and approach depends on the kind of decisions and the analysis that comes from it. At the same time, right, all of this, that kind of data is very critical that impacts all these various factors, right? Because at the end of the day, I can spend a lot of money, implement all these applications, but if the user adoption is not there, then it's just as good as dead. And all of this comes down to the operational cost of implementing such solutions, and that is very, very highly dependent on the kind of data that is being fed into the applications to create the kind of impact that is needed by the business. So this is what we're talking about, the preamble, insofar as this presentation is concerned, is that data is very critical, right? It fuels the digital transformation as well as the business innovation. As I think, if I'm not mistaken, based on what Andy presented in Enterprise Search yesterday, it's pretty much the same, about 80%. A lot of data is still locked in silos, in raw format. They're not ready for the business to use, right? And that's why when we want to kick off advanced applications or advanced analytics applications, it can be time consuming, right? 80% of the time is actually spent to prepare the data, right? Before it can be made available to the data scientists or the business users to use. What kind of stuff do they do? They need to find out where the data is in terms of discovery. After I find it, I need to understand it. I need to ingest the data. I need to assess the quality of the data, whether it's clean or not, can it be used, all culminating in terms of the business readiness of the data status. 80% is spent, right, doing this area. And then after that's done, then the application has been built and then deploy out to the business sector to use, right? So the same study by McKinsey, I think, yeah, McKinsey as well, Global Trader Transformation 2019. This is where they compare a lot of the different companies. I believe they have, they were asking the question of lack of data quality and availability, right? What's the impact in terms of the amount of time spent on non-value added tasks? So they're saying they're comparing those companies that actually have a mature data management platform spend 80% less time compared to the rest in terms of getting the data ready, preparing the data, and making it available to the business to use. And those data that they're using, it can be as simple as a dashboard to look at their channel performance, for example, in them relative to what the actuals are compared to the budgets, and then they compare the trendings over time, right? It can be stuff like operational stuff, how many submissions for credit, how many was rejected, how many was approved, how many was pending documentation, and so forth. Or it can be monitoring all the different branches in terms of performance, in terms of loans approved, loans applied, and so forth. Of course, today we talk about moratorium, so that depends on how they're going to look at it as well. And then it goes down to domain reports, right? In this case, I showcase the general insurance domain reports from Indonesia. This is where we come into different departments, like underwriting, claims, reinsurance, and so forth. These are the simple stuff. Going into the advanced analytics for predictive. In this case, here what you're seeing is that the renewal churn analytics, we want to predict which customer is not going to renew. In this case, it's a general insurance, not going to renew the policy. So we want to study the customer demographics, the psychographics, the behavior, right, and so forth. How long has they been with the company, right? What is the, of course, comparing to the average claim status, turnaround time, right? The amount of spend they've been with the company in terms of, it may not necessarily be motor insurance, it can be non-motor insurance like fire, right? And so forth. Now, behind this is where we do all the development and design for to churn out a dashboard like this to do the prediction. Now, if you look at this particular diagram, this is actually the predictive analytics design and development side where we're incorporating all the AI modules into the algorithm. But at the very bottom here, you will see what you call data preparation. Without data, all of these are useless. So this is where I'm going to focus on, talk about data preparation. Okay, typically an architecture like this, whereby you may have multiple data sources, regardless whether it's structured, semi-structured, unstructured. We want to bring the data in, we integrate them, or ingest them into a data repository, right? It can be staging area, it can be a data warehouse, it can be a data lake, and so forth, right? For multi-dimensional analysis, reporting, and so forth, this is where data modeling comes into play, right? This is where we bring the data in, we consolidate them, and we build into a model, right, for reporting and analytics purposes. And then this is where the advanced analytics for data manufacturing comes in. Now, this is where the business users interact with the data. This is where adoption comes in, right? And the business impacts come into play. In preparation for this, right, is where a lot of work is done behind the scenes, right? As I mentioned before, data integration, data ingestion, data quality, as well as data governance. Why? Because you want to build trust, right, for the users, right, in terms of whether this is where adoption comes into play. If you don't trust the data, they're not going to use it, right? When they start questioning whether it's correct, how it's calculated, and so forth, and after a while they say, oh no, this is wrong, that's wrong. So they would drop the entire thing altogether. So the whole objective was to build data trust for the business users to use the applications, to adopt the applications, to help them drive decisions and their go-to-market approach and strategies. At the same time, fueling it into advanced analytics like predictive and prescriptive. So let us now drill into the area whereby we talk about the overall data management. Insofar as data is concerned, there is the process of collecting the data. We need to organize it. We need to analyze it, and then it runs on a platform, whether you're running on cloud or Microsoft Azure, AWS, IBM, on-premise, doesn't really matter. Today, it's available. Now, within your data organization or data preparation portion, this is where the data ingestion integration comes into play. We'll talk about data quality in a while, and then data governance and curation, and then making the data available for self-service and exploitation, and then having the users to analyze and to make use of it to drive certain applications. The product that we use essentially to help us to provide a unified data management platform. We work extensively with IBM. In this particular case, we work with IBM Infosphere information server. If you look at this, they have the modules for data integration, the data quality, and the information governance catalog. I'll be covering each of the module briefly. Of course, if you need to have more details, or I need to have a further demo on this, please feel free to contact us. We'll be more than happy to drill down further on the details, right? So all these applications supported by a layer of common connectivity to different databases. We can share a common metadata, right? As well as data lineage, right? So let me go into data integration quickly. Essentially, before, you can make data available to the business users, first of all, you need to bring the data in from your various data sources, right? The Unit technology is able to provide the flexibility to extract the data, right, from different sources, right? At, let's say, a preferred time, or it can be real-time basis, it can be batch basis. You bring to collect the data, right, to bring them on into a common repository, right? So, of course, it's a cater for the kind of volume you're talking about and the variety as well. And with it, you need to have some capabilities to be able to transform data, right, with a bit of AI injected into it as well. So insofar as IBM Infosphere for data integration is concerned, common name is data stage. This is where you can ingest, transform, process, and deliver data to different any systems. So I can connect to different enterprise data sources, Hadoop and non-Hadoop, right? It has the capability to design and transform data, right? It can do data parsing, right? I can aggregate the data. I can tear the data apart to split the data and reform it in different manner as well, okay? So the whole thing is to provide increased productivity and time to value. They have machine learning assisted visual flow design built in, and has automatic schema propagation and so forth. So I'm not going to go through all of this. Essentially, these are the few key points I'm going to cover insofar as the product is concerned. It does help in productivity, and it does have the machine learning assisted visual design to actually allow you to deploy faster on the ETL workflows. So in terms of connectivity, as I mentioned, whether it's Hadoop, non-Hadoop, applications and whatnot, this is the whole chart of it. Just documenting the fact that what kind of databases and whatnot it can connect to and applications, right? It's all there, it's all documented. And then from the product standpoint is a drag and drop interface, right? All of this is inbuilt, everything is there. So it's quite straightforward to build the ETL workflow. The next I'm going to cover is actually data quality. This is a very interesting subject. And this is today in the region, there's a huge demand in terms of data quality management. Reason being, as I mentioned earlier, right? A lot of companies are going into the advanced analytics application. Before I can even do those applications, I need to have this to ensure the data is clean, it's usable, right? So this thing is very interesting. So if you look at the survey conducted by the Data Warehouse Institute back in Q3 of last year, the question asked was, which of the following steps will be most important right now to improve an organization's success? What is BI analytics and increase the value it gains from the data assets? Top of the list is actually improving data quality and trust of data. So 2/3, right, of those who surveyed, right, they're saying that data quality and trust is top of the agenda, right? And about half of those surveyed is saying that we need to have a data catalog and the metadata management. Reason being is because we have data coming from so many sources within and beyond the firewall. We want to decrease the amount of time looking for the data. Therefore, the data catalog and the metadata measurement comes into play, simply by going in and say, hey, you know, when I'm going into the data catalog, I can easily find, oh, this piece of data, let's say, for example, agent commission, is coming from this particular table, this particular field, or this is house computed, and so forth. So it's easier to understand, it's easier to find. It's very similar to what Andy presented yesterday in terms of enterprise search productive flow. Just that this is more for the data side, okay? So if you look at the overall data quality management framework, right? First of all, you need to understand your data. This is where the data assessment is all about. If you don't understand your data, then there's no way you can clean it. So that's where data assessment comes to play in terms of understanding the data. We need to measure the data quality. Then we can analyze it. Then having understood that, then we can start going into data cleansing, right? This is where we look at parsing, standardization, correcting the data, going to data enhancement, going into the deduplication, like matching, consolidation, and then with the continuous, and this side continuous monitoring, and this cycle continues, right? So as far as data quality in the Infosphere is concerned, it allows us all these capabilities, okay? And so then it goes with the assessment side, it can do the cleansing side and the monitoring side. These are the three areas. Let us drill into this data cleansing approach, right? First and foremost is investigation of data. As I mentioned, this is a data assessment. Some call it data profiling. Although we understand that we do standardization of data, matching, and the retention of the data. Underneath it all, okay, will be the data governance portion, which will come to it later. So I will briefly share with you what this is about. I'm sure most of you can relate to this. You probably have seen this before, okay? Under the assessment side, or somewhat the profiling, we want to look at the columns within a single domain, right? Whether the data values are complete or whether it is partial data values, right? So it can be Mr., it can be Kampong, it can be Jalan, yeah? You'll see all this stuff later on. We're looking at simple data formats, whether it confines to alpha, numeric, blanks. Now is another one, we shall come to it. Now is a very special attribute, right? That impacts a lot of the, it takes a lot of implementation time, okay? So breaking down in terms of the kind of assessment or kind of profiling we do, as I mentioned, right? We look at column profiling, we look at table profiling in terms of the dependencies and relationship, even in the cross-table profiling, and of course, at the end of the day, analyzing the data profiles. This is about knowing your data, right? So what kind of profiling do you do? For example, you go into, let's say, a customer master file, right? And then we look at, let's say, for example, in this case, we look at our NRIC, right? So it's able to tell us that, your data quality index is about 99%. We detected some with dashes, some without dashes, and some is likely to look like an OIC number. That you can compute, of course, after defining a kind of threshold that's acceptable to you on the DQI, data quality index, then it computes kind of your index or the measurement for, let's say in this case, your NRIC number. KTP is actually the Indonesian NRIC, because I present it both sides, so I just bring all these two together. The other one is the postal code, right? Again, same thing. It tells you the detection of the kind of formats you have, 5-digit, 4-digit. So do you want to standardize it to 5 digits and so forth, right? And then this is the distribution insofar as the state is concerned, right? Selangor, right? Johor, and so forth. Here, don't mind, this is just, I brought in again, Jakarta, Bandung, Surabaya, and whatnot. This is just to show the Indonesian side, right? But it does all this frequency distribution, right? Same thing in Malaysia, especially gender. You have male, female, perempuan, lelaki. So at the end of the day, when you look at this, right, and you understand that, oh, this is the kind of stuff that I have, this is where you make a decision to what do you want to do with it, right? Do I want to standardize for male, female, what? And I mean, most cases you have male, female. If it's business, then it's probably business and so forth, right? Then, yeah, null values, right? A lot of computation, especially computational fields, right? have null values. Right? We have done many implementations in the business analytics and business intelligence area. One of which, I mean, part and parcel of that is the data integration side, and then especially and along the way, right? You know, especially during UAT, when numbers don't tally up, right? Then we start doing all this investigation, and you find out that a lot of null values exist, especially so it impacts computation, the integrity of data row selection, right? Of course, along the way, we're doing UAT and whatnot, you know, because of all this kind of stuff happening behind the scenes, user perception, the implementation quality will be impacted. And then, of course, timeline, right? And again, it comes into the user adoption again because of the data trust issues. So this is where we are trying to, using technology to, as far as data quality is concerned, to remove all of these showstoppers insofar as data is concerned. So a snapshot of this, you can see some of the stuff that, this is a project we did 3-4 years back for one of the insurance companies in Malaysia for data profiling, data cleansing, because they are in the process of migrating to a new core. So before they migrate, they want to clean up the data. So part and parcel of that is the profiling portion. And this is what the kind of data we detected, right? All this kind of stuff. So this is where they make a decision, say, we'll standardize these, all these different fields before they actually move into the new core. So this brings me to standardization. It's about corrections, it's about parsing, right? This is where we want to define the standards to normalize the particular data. So the best way to show the example standardization is an example. For example, you get a report. Now I've seen this many times, Indonesia and Malaysia as well, right? They do this, and then somehow this data is coming from multiple systems, right? But they're actually referring to the same customer. So when we put out a report and they say, okay, we want to look at the highest revenue by customer. Naturally, if you look at my numbers, right, this is the one that has the highest revenue. But users know, they know. Normally, they will have a separate spreadsheet kept to do all that kind of stuff. And they say, your report is wrong. In fact, it's not wrong. It's just that the data entries are all different. So by understanding, going through the standardization and the process of deduplication, we now know that these are all the same customer. And once we know, we can say, okay, why don't we standardize it, right? So we can actually say, okay, for all these customers, we will standardize to this particular format to identify this particular customer or this customer number, address, and then we aggregate up the total sales. And this is where it gives you the right report. Normally, users will have a separate spreadsheet in this if they don't do the standardization from the core applications if there are multiple data sources. The next one is about the deduplication, where we do matching technologies and where we engage procedural data cleansing, right? To get that comes packaged with the application itself will be the more than about 25 pre-built matching types, right? So for example, let's say I detected customer, right, from 2 different data sources. Now it's telling me that, hey, you know, we detected this, okay? So it's using probabilistic matching, excuse me, one of the algorithms like that, and assigning all these scores, right? Again, it tells you that, okay, these are the stuff that we detected. What do you want to do with it? Do you want to keep it? Do you want to do something about it or what? So it's able to automate this kind of detection for you to look at the duplicates that exist in multiple applications. Now, once that's done, right, then we look at in terms of the retention, right? Now you decide. Now the retention, same thing. You can define the rules, right? How you want to retain the record. So in this case, I may have 3, so I can tell them that, hey, you know, retain the theme that is most frequently used or match set, depending on your rules, right? Same thing with address, most frequently used, and so forth. So by doing this, the system is, by defining the rules, now the system is able, based on the rules, right? They say, okay, we will retain this particular record based on the 3 that we detected. So that brings this, how it's been done in within the cycle for standardization, in terms of the deduplication, and in terms of the retention. Okay, so a case in point, right, in terms of data profiling and data cleansing. Later on, I think next session after me will be Ludi. I think he was talking about the report distribution. So one of the things, like we talk about output management system, right? For example, that this is one of the solutions we offer. Especially not today, a lot of those statements, invoices, and whatnot are being electronically distributed to customers today, right? Now the whole thing is that you want to ensure maximum reach. Now to do that, you want to ensure that the email ID is correct so that it can go, it can reach the customer. Now of course we cannot help it if they do a typo or not, but assuming the format is correct, right? At abc@gmail or hotmail.com and so forth. So we can look at that. Of course, customer information, customer billing addresses. So these are all there, and we can actually send all these documents out to the customers for maximum reach. Okay. The last module I want to talk about is the information governance catalog, right? It is like establishing a mini government, right, for your data ecosystem, yeah. So you can become the prime minister of the information governance. Okay, again, same report conducted by the Data Warehouse Institute for Best Practices report last year of Q3 of 2020. What is it that they want to? What are the most important goals in setting up a centralized data catalog? Glossary or metadata repository. Glossary can be this is the metadata portion, right? So the number one, 75% of those surveys say make it easier for users to find the data that they're looking for, right? More so, as I mentioned earlier, is to make it available, to understand them, so that they can use it for their analytics applications, reporting, and so forth. Okay. So, and again, same thing within the insurance side, the Accord reference architecture. If you look at the 7 integrated components or the enterprise architecture framework for the insurance industry, central to all the components, right, is actually the business glossary. This is a data governance portion, the main hub supporting all the other components surrounding it, whether it's data modeling, right, or process modeling or product framework. So what then is data governance? To make it, instead of reading it out, right, essentially it's just the implementation, right, of the various policies, procedures, and whatnot, and defining the roles and responsibilities of the individuals within the organization needed to manage data, right, which is deemed as a corporate asset for the organization. So you're just surrounding the data assets with a set of policies and procedures, right, and who is responsible for different areas of the data. Okay, why then data governance, right? Data governance is quite, part and parcel of data quality, right? Let me put it another way, encapsulating the data quality management that I talked about just now, right? As well as data integration is actually data governance, right? The whole idea, why data governance is required, essentially is very goal-driven, right? So some of those goals are compliance rules, like regulatory compliance. I mean, Malaysia is PDPA, right? Coming into play for the insurance sector is MFRS. The financial sector, the other financial sectors like banking, these are the IFRS, and depending on if you are if your HQ is based out in US, then there is other compliances as well that you need to follow. So not all the regulatory compliance, data privacy, security, right? But from a technical perspective, right, the goals will be data quality, and right, we spoke about that. The standardization, consolidation, documentation insofar as the metadata management, data catalogs are concerned. And later on, you will see part of that is actually data lineage, right? So this whole idea is to manage the data sitting within your corporate. So the dimensions of data governance is not just about data, surrounding data, right? They are the process. No, let me start with people, the business portion, the processes involved, of course, a technology war, right? Let's start with the people. The people of interest to interact with data, like your stakeholders, right? In terms of, as I mentioned, compliance, right? They need data to ensure that the reporting side, the data that is actually populating the compliance reports is correct, okay? From the business side, this is where they want to, because of compliance, regulatory reporting, this is part and parcel of risk reduction. From an operations standpoint, in terms of efficiency, right? I need data to run my campaign, right? Am I getting the reach? Are my my email hitting being properly, successfully sent to the recipients, right? This is a process. The rules, the procedures, the policies, right? What are the processes that we have? And the technology. Do we have a unified data platform insofar as data quality, data integration, and data governance to manage the entire layer of data governance, right? That comes with metadata management, data lineage, and data discovery. Last is your data, okay? So because, as I mentioned, this is where we establish the guidelines of policy to manage how it's created, stored, and managed. Then the practices involved insofar as keeping track of the metadata. The business metadata, insofar as how you define the data elements, the rules, the technical metadata, insofar as the form and structure and attributes, the processing metadata, insofar as what kind of transformation and movement of the data from source to the, let's say, the data warehouse or staging area, and what kind of transformation they apply to transform the data from one state to another, right? And the usage metadata, insofar as the how it was being used and who's using it, in which applications being used. So the overall data lifecycle from the point that it's created, stored, moved around, used, and subsequently retired, right? You need a framework to actually be able to measure it, to analyze it, clean, profile, enhancement, and consolidate. All of this from 1 to 5, we talked about that earlier. So these, as I mentioned, encapsulating all of this is actually the data governance portion. Okay. So this is where you define, right? From a product perspective, you can define the metadata, you can the rules and policies, into the metadata management portion, as well as the data cataloging. Also, this is where you define who is responsible for what area of the data, who owns the data, who's supposed to allow to make changes, right? Approve certain areas for changes to the data, for example, right? So, for example, this is very typical, right? A user, right? Who can I contact if I have questions about data, how it is transformed, how it is calculated, is it correct, right? How can I trust it? What is the definition? All of these questions, right, is where we want to put it into the information catalog. So the product itself comes with a quite, I would say that complete. Okay, it has the definition of categories and terms, right? This is define the policies and rules. What are your information assets? And then it does have an internal workflow system for you to submit to the data steward or whoever that you define is responsible for approving changes to the data, right? And then a record in terms of the approval cycle, okay? So in here, in the administration portion is where we define the catalog management, right? As well as the lineage management, right? So in catalog management, we define the workflow, the approval cycle, right? The glossary, right? All of this is being done here, right? And once it's set up, then of course later on, this is where the users interact so that they can easily find the data which they need for the use, okay? And insofar as lineage management, from the point of report, I can actually backtrack all the way to the source, the tables, the fields, the computation. If it's a derived field, we want to know which fields are coming from which tables and how it is being computed, right? is where lineage management is all about. In terms, from a user perspective, right? And I want to know, for example, my gross written premium, right? For retail, for corporate, for commercial, for marine. Let's say, for example, each of them means different things. Then I can actually find out, okay, let's say, for example, gross written premium for retail, right? This is what it means, right? And this is where we get this data from. And this is how we compute, right? And so forth. And on and on and on. So all this can be easily defined, all the business terms into the system for governance purposes. Okay? And then you look at all the different hierarchies for the resources in terms of structured data, unstructured data. You can go into your logical and physical data models and definitions as well. And then your queries. You want to query insofar as the BI models or the BI reports. You can do all of this. Okay, and those rules that we defined in data quality earlier to come up with a data quality index, now you no longer have to redefine again. And basically what you need to do is to bring them in to the governance product, the information governance portion. So in fact, you don't really have to do very much, because you just have to point to the path. That's about it, because it's all integrated. And then you don't have to redo all of this. Right? So high level, I covered a little bit in terms of the data governance portion. The question now is what are the best practices to establish a data governance model in an organization? I borrowed this content from McKinsey. So here, you're talking about establishing the data management office. Earlier, talked about these are the guys who are involved in the establishment of the policies, standards. You know, they are the one who empower the data leaders to particular domains of the company and so forth. And then from a data council perspective, right? This is where the talk about the strategic direction, principles of data governance, and then the data leadership. Yeah. So in a way, in general, in high level, these are the three key components. Some they call it by different names, but you can't really run away from these three key areas insofar as coming up with the data governance model. Right. So how do you start the data governance portion? Right. So don't go big bang. Essentially, you start with a limited scope, right? You want to start with a small subject or one subject for that matter, but maybe you have a high degree of cross-functionality, like customer, client, premium, and so forth. And then for each subject area, right, then is where you define the level of business interest and participation, right? So then it's more manageable, right? So one of those approach is using the agile data governance, right? So then you have the active collaborations with the subject experts, right, from the particular domain, right? It's short, it's fast moving, right? And the functionalities of business capability is well defined, right? You don't go all the way through. Now with this, right, then when you're done, this is where you re-execute for the different areas as well. Because as you go through the pilot phase, you learn something new, you learn from the mistakes, so you don't not repeat the same thing again in the next iteration and the next iteration and the next iteration. So essentially, learning and improving from one iteration to another, right? Now, example of this essentially is that if you are looking at let's say the direction is I want to implement a cross-sell, upsell, right? Application for predictive analytics and prescriptive analytics, for example. This is what I want to do. Right? Before I can do that, first thing is that, right, I want to look at the data governance portion, right? Of course, the data architecture. Sitting below is the data governance portion, comprising of the policies and procedures for the data, comprising of the data cleansing and data assessment area, right? So you can start doing like this, then slowly moving on to the next iteration, right? This is one strategy that you can consider. Okay. So that's what I covered quickly so far as the integration, quality, and governance catalog, right? The whole idea is to improve business decision making, as I mentioned earlier, in providing not just business-ready data, but the right business-ready data. The whole idea is to help business users to drive their go-to-market strategies, to improve their revenue, right, and manage costs. And this also, because of the time spent, is now lesser to find data, to understand data, that can help to improve productivity. So within the enterprise, our framework for data and information management framework, of course, what I spoke about essentially is this area, which is actually the product I talk about from IBM for Infosphere. Of course, apart from that, we also do data warehouse, data modeling, and the fun portion of the business side is where the data visualization comes into play, and the data monetization for advanced analytics and predictive analytics, prescriptive analytics. The whole idea is why I talk about this, because we need to talk about the technical to business alignment, right? Otherwise, again, not data in silo, but operation also silo operation. Right? So we're aligning this and bridging the gap between the business side and the technology side. Okay. Now, before this, right? I'll come back to this slide. We talk about data architecture today, right? Let me cover quickly about data architecture. Now, today we are talking about also not only on-premise, but cloud-based environment. One of the key areas we want to look at is the foundation for the data architecture. We want to look at as I mentioned before, providing the right business-ready data, but also injecting with machine learning, right? And you want to integrate data and perform data quality management on Hadoop and non-Hadoop environments. So the whole idea is that whether, let's say, cloud-based and whatnot, you're running containerization using, let's say, Kubernetes service support on Amazon, Microsoft Azure Cloud, and so forth. What we talk about essentially is the portability between different platforms. You can run anytime, anywhere, right? So it uses few resources compared to VM, right? And giving you a higher utilization of compute resources. And I'm not going to go through all of this. Essentially, what it does is that with the containerization using Kubernetes, it provides an easier management from installation, upgrade, and roadblock processes that is built into this particular platform. Yeah. So let me go into this. So we talk about IBM Cloud Pack for data. Now, right away, you can see the data integration portion side is already a container, right? This is the ETL portion, right? This is the cataloging portion. Now, supporting all of this, right, is where we talk about platform interface. That is where the Red Hat comes into play, and then you can deploy to any cloud, right? So we're looking at the Cloud Pack for data. So it actually helps to in terms of data collection, connection, right? Governing, searching, understanding and prepping the data, letting you build, whether it's BI reporting for descriptive analytics, predictive analytics, prescriptive analytics, your model management, and you can run any other analytic applications anywhere, right? So you drill inside, this is where we're talking about ingestion integration that I spoke about earlier. This is the cataloging portion, right? This is where all the predictive analytics comes into play. You also have the AI portion for Watson Assistant. All this is available today on the IBM Cloud Pack for data. You don't have to buy all of it. You can go buy cartridges. So for example, if I only want to look at ingestion and integration, I only buy the ETL or data stage cartridge. That's all. But the rest, insofar as the platform services, are all available. So this one, just quickly share with you in terms of the cloud environment. So therefore, the platform runs on cloud and non-cloud. Okay, So this is rounding off my presentation this morning. This is where we talk about insofar as the data governance portion, right? We are actually connecting the technology people with the business people. We also want to reduce the time spent to prepare the data, right? So then we can actually quickly make it available for the business to use to drive their business initiatives. And this is where this unified data platform is all about, supporting all of this. Okay. So in conclusion, so I want to wrap my presentation by going to the last slide. Depending on where you are today, as far as the journey is concerned, for those in the blue boxes, this is we're talking about the reporting side. Some call it business intelligence, right? And as we are moving, for those with the mature environment where they have the ETL portion, the reporting side, they are now starting to move into the red boxes, going into the advanced analytics, using the features and capabilities to drive their revenue management initiatives like cross-sell, upsell, and so forth, right? So, and this also, like I mentioned, to align the technology side with the business side. So I want to leave question, ending my presentation this morning is, where are you today insofar as this journey is concerned, relative to the drive towards the advanced analytics application, right? Like predictive, prescriptive, AI for that matter. Okay. So thank you very much for your time. I think I overran, if I'm not mistaken, right? But I'm open to any Q&A. Back to you, Jihan and May.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Garrick, for the enlightening presentation. We shall now move into the Q&A session. At the moment, I already have received some questions with me.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so first question, do I need to replace my current BI application if I'm only interested in data stage ETL?
No, you don't. You don't need to replace everything. You just have to implement the data stage component as your ETL.
Okay. Okay, so moving to the next question, is the IBM Infosphere implementation modular? Because we are
Yes.
also interested in like data quality at the moment.
Yes, it is modular. You don't have to have the entire platform, as I mentioned, right? For data integration, data quality, as well as data governance. But if you are interested only in the quality side, you can just implement the data quality for data assessment, data cleansing, and you can do that modularly. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Moving to the next question. How long to implement data governance?
It's not very hard to answer. It all depends in terms of your goals and direction. But as I mentioned, right, the best approach I would recommend is using the agile approach. For example, if I want to do customer, I want to apply data governance on my customer data. So we can start with customer data and then slowly move to product and to other areas as well, right? Now, typically, if you're looking at that, data governance, as I mentioned, is encapsulating the data assessment side and data management, the data cleansing side. So depending on the quality of the data you have and what you need to do, probably, right, I'm just using our past experience. It can be anywhere from 3 months and above, roughly. Yeah.
Okay. I think I see a raise of hand. To this Mr. Abdul Samad, would you like to type your question in the Q&A box, or would you like to speak? Maybe you can reply in the chat box. Okay, so if you would like to speak, or if you would like to post your question in the chat box, just please write it down. Okay, maybe we will take another question first. What's your focus in advanced analytics?
Currently, our advanced analytics area will be in the revenue, helping customers to look into revenue, especially in the insurance sector. Today, the pandemic, right? I think not only about revenue related can be two types. One is to drive new revenue. The other one is also about revenue retention, right? So how do I retain my customers? So for example, in the insurance sector today, we want to, they're looking at, for example, policy renewal. Yeah? Customers' policy will expire within 6 months' time. We want to predict who is not going to renew and who has a likelihood to defect. So before they defect, with the predictive analytics, giving that kind of information, now they can actually take a proactive action as much as possible to prevent the customer from defecting and continue renewing their policy, thus retaining the revenue within the organization.
Okay, there's this question here in the Q&A box. Mm-hmm. What skill set does the end user need to have?
Okay, for which particular area? Talking about data governance or data cleansing? I'm not sure. But from generally, if you're talking about the entire data governance area, covering both data quality and data integration. For both data quality, for integration side, normally we work with IT department. They will have pretty good idea in terms of the data, kind of data they have, and they can actually advise us in terms of how to, or we work together to deal with the data. From the data management, from the data management portion for quality side, it can be a mixture of both IT and the user side. Users will have more, they will have better idea in terms of the kind of data quality they've been facing as well. So then we work with these two teams, right, to actually iron out the gaps that they have for data quality. But in the governance side, essentially, you don't really need any particular skill set. Essentially, it's how you want to define the kind of policies, the data rules that you want to govern your internal data. For example, right, one of the experiences that we have some time back is we detected that the IC number, right, the very last digit was supposed to be male, but the gender was female. Now we are in no position to change that information. Now it goes back to whoever is responsible, who owns the customer data, to say, what do you want to do with it, right? It can be, not a data entry error for that matter, but it can be as simple as just the information was provided by the, the Home's Ministry of Home, our IC department. It can be like that. So, but then again, the system detects those anomalies, and somebody has to make a decision to say what you want to do with it.
Okay, we've received another question. Most of the times, management is concerned on the ROI by investment into the data management solution.
Yep.
So what are the normal cost saving within internal management or operational versus the opportunity of upsell by using the data derived from this tool?
Well, there are many insofar as data quality is concerned, right? Let's say, for example, as I mentioned, if you're looking into upsell and cross-sell, right? I want to predict, right, which set of customers who bought product A is likely to buy or consume product B and service C, right? Now, if you were to go to it manually, right, it's going to take you a long, long time. So applying predictive analytics, for example, will be able to give you that kind of insight insofar as who is likely to buy and who is not likely to buy. Now, to do that, you need the data, right? If your data is actually having a lot of, I don't know, not clean, for example, right? You just throw them in, obviously, garbage in, garbage out, right? But these are kind of stuff that look at from the impact perspective from the business side, like, for example, cross-sell, upsell, customer retention or revenue retention, those things, right? For that matter, as I mentioned earlier, if we are actually emailing out a lot of invoices or statements out to our customers, right? If the email IDs are wrong, non-existent, right? So number one, we're wasting time, we're wasting resources, and this gets rejected all the time. So these are some of the business impact that they can consider. There are many areas, but I can talk about my head. These are the few scenarios I can think of, but I'll be more than happy to take this up further with whoever raised this question.
Okay, I hope we've answered your questions. Looks like we are running out of time. So, but if you have any follow-up questions or any other queries, you can just still post in the Q&A box, and we will look into it at the end of the session for today, at the end of the event today.
Yes, please feel free to do so. Yeah. Anyways, thank you, May. Back to you.
Okay, I'll pass the session over to Jihan.
Thank you, May. And thank you to Mr. Garrick. We are excited to see the ways that you can overcome these new challenges in the new normal. Moving on to our next speaker, let us introduce Ludi Chia, the business consultant here at InfoConnect. He aims to tackle challenges with reporting in the finance industry and the ways to overcome them using ERDS solutions. Speaking about powering up the financial industry with secured report distribution, let us welcome Ludi Chia.
Thank you, Jian. Thank you, Jian. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ludi. So let me share my screen. Jian, is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes, we
Okay,
can see
cool.
the screen.
So basically today we will more focus on the retribution on the financial industry. So for my agenda for today, I will split into three parts. First is, give me a moment. First is I will talk about the challenges that faced by the financial industry like bank, insurance, what they face when it comes to reporting. As you know, reports or so-called data is very important to the organization for them to analyze or to understand the market segment. So after we talk about the challenges that face when it comes to report, we will talk about how we can resolve it by having ERDS or a so-called enterprise report distribution system. So by having ERDS, we will talk about how we can counter the challenges. So lastly, we will talk about the conclusion, what's the benefits, what's the future prospect after you having ERDS and so on. So in the meantime, if you have any question, just feel free to drop down in the Q&A session and we will answer accordingly after during the Q&A session. So let's talk about the challenges. What challenges that faced by the banks as well as the financial industry. So first is a heavy processing on call. As you know, financial industry, they are very data driven. They have a lot of data required to generate every single day. So in order to generate the data, they normally use their legacy system or so-called the core system to generate. So imagine every time when you generate your data, we're talking about like maybe 10 gigs or even 100 gigs of files in a single day or even in a monthly basis. So when it comes to processing heavily, the core will have a lot of burden on it, meaning when you process it, you even require to process during the working hours. So what normally the industry players they encounter is they can't even access to the core in order to retrieve the report because the system is still processing heavily. So second challenges that they face mostly is to retrieve document. So imagine for industry players, they not just have like one so-called system or legacy system, they maybe have multiple 10 or 50 or even 100 system in order to sustain the business. So for users to retrieve the document, for example, I want to retrieve a document from finance, I need to go to the finance system. If I want to retrieve the HR document, I need to go to HR document. So each individual module or so products, I need to access again to another system in order to retrieve all the documents, which is quite hassle up basically. So when you have too many systems, if you're talking about 50 to 100, we will link to managing how you want to manage all these documents, which is hassle as for the operator as well. Meaning in order for them to maintain all these documents or so-called reports, they need to have individual staff in order to maintain all this system accordingly. So lastly will be give me a moment. So lastly will be manual printing. As you know, when you retrieve a document, you need to print out from the core. So every time you want to retrieve a report, you need to print out, which basically incur cost to the organization. Meaning every time when you print out, you will require to price for printing as well as your paper consumption. So if this is just talking about printing reports, right? But what if you want to send out your report? For example, you have a statement, you have a policy scheduler, you want to send out to your client. That one incur cost as well because you need to, hire a person, to take the report, put into the envelope, and then you need to send out this envelope to your vendor so that he can help you to send out as a physical mail. So these are all costs that will basically reduce the profit or so-called the ROI of the company. So the question now is how we can resolve, right? After we talk about so many challenges, how or how the system that we will try to propose that can resolve or try to minimize the problem of the challenges that the financial industry face. So what we try to introduce is ERDS, Enterprise Report Distribution Solution. So to make ERDS to make it simplify so that you can understand, I would always like to use a production line or so-called automobile production line to explain on it. So imagine if you want to design a car or you want to build a car, first you need a raw material, right? You need the window, the engine, the wheels, the tires, or so-called the doors in order to build a car, right? So these are all supplied from your supplier. So imagine your supplier give all of your raw material through your production line. So what you do is you take all this raw material, consolidate it, produce it into a vehicles so that you can output and distribute into multiple channels or so-called sell your car, basically. So ERDS is basically the same thing. It's so-called a centralized processing hub. So meaning how it does is integrate to your core. So your core just need to provide us the raw file or so-called the raw material. So by having all these raw files or so-called the information or data, ERDS will help you to process and even it can design based on your requirement. So for example, like automobile, right, to design a car, like you want to design a sedan or so-called a wagon. So you can design based on your design. You need to draw out the tool, the so-called the layout, right? So ERDS is the same thing. If you want to have a design out of a reporting, you can also use the designing tools to design, process, as well as output into different channel, distribute into different channel. So to make it in a detailed ways, I will show you in the so-called in the diagram. So for example, you have multiple departments. You have operation, you have sales, marketing, finance. So how it works is that if department have their own so-called core or so-called application or we so-called system, so all of them will basically generate out, previously everyone will retrieve all the information through the system, right? So now you don't need. All the information that produced by the system or the legacy system will generate out all this data or we so-called formatted or unformatted spool file. So all this spool file is either in text format or in flag record, CSV, XML, or even in PDF format. What it will do is it will push this input file to ERDS. So basically you ease the burden of the core. The core just provide you all the data. And ERDS will help you to design the document. So for example, if you want to design your statement to have a logo or category standardize your header, footer, or your details, it can help. You have a designing module for you to design the data, and it can help you to classify the data, how you want to map it, how you want to map the data to the template, and how you want to even to split the document. So after you design the template, you can eventually come to the generation. So meaning, as I mentioned, we can integrate into multiple core. Each core can have their own queue. So basically, it can act as a centralized processing hub to process most of your data in a single system, and then as well as output as a PDF file. So lastly will be delivery, how ERDS can export into multiple channel. So for example, you can output as a PDF file or in text format, or if you want to distribute in the email basis, meaning you want to send out like a statement to your customer, we can eventually send out into email as well. And when it comes to hard copy, we can also, if you want to some like document like your contract base, you want to print out a copy, ERDS can auto sync your printer or your MFP to print out the contract itself. Fax or even centralized secure archive repository can be achieved as well. And lastly will be the web, meaning you can store all of your document in a web portal so that everyone can just retrieve in a single point web. So now we're talking about the functionality. What is the maze of ERDS? What is the functionality that have in ERDS? First is composition, like I just mentioned, distribution, archiving, view and search, monitoring, access right security, and retention. So I will further explain in my following slide. So as you can see, composition. Composition basically is to process a file. Is either in formatted or unformatted data. ERDS can achieve this. So like based on our experience, some banks or even insurance, they have formatted data or not formatted data. So we can eventually, based on their requirement, to convert all this data into a readable format, so that we, when it comes to outputting as a PDF, users are much more easier to retrieve the information through the report. And when it comes to splitting, we are also expertise on this, meaning because as you know, as I mentioned, when it comes to industrial players, there are tons of reports every day. So when it comes to ERDS, we are able to split larger 10 gigs, 50 gigs, or even up to 100 gigs. So we are used to it. So secondly will be distribution. As I mentioned, you can distribute into multiple channels. You want to archive, you want to store your report in the centralized repository, or you want to send out your email, can achieve as well. Thirdly will be archiving and retrieving. So meaning, in terms of retrieving, you want to have a portal, right? Like I mentioned, you have a portal to retrieve a document. So what this portal can do is, when you log into the system, it would populate the latest report in your screen. As you can see, this is a today's screen, this week, last week, this month. So it will display based on the dedicated date or based on your requirement. So imagine if I already retrieve this document, it will come up with a status mention, or this is already read, or this is already unread based on the color indicator. So you may ask how we can identify the access right to make sure that this user can only see a particular document. We eventually have an access matrix maintenance tools. So meaning you can maintain your access control. So for example, user 1, you can only see finance report. So in the screen, you can only see finance. So if you want to, your manager can see finance, HR, or even GL reports, we can eventually maintain in the access control maintenance screen. So as you can see, you can download your document in either PDF, text, or CSV document. So for move on, we will talk about search and view. So meaning when you want to search a particular document, right? You want to search a specific document or so-called profile. We can have two types. One is profile based, meaning you can select a particular view or particular branch, and the report will display out accordingly based on the module that you selected. And if you have control, your access control, the module listing will just distribute the module that can access by the particular user. So it's much more easier for the user to filter. So secondly will be content search, or we so-called advanced search. So meaning if you want to search a particular report, a dedicated report, we can eventually use advanced search to search it out. And when it comes to viewing, we have viewing by bottle. You want to use view by mobile also can. For your smartphone, your thumbnail viewing, or you want to, instead of downloading the view, you can also page stream out the report, instead of downloading the report. And move on, it will be the monitoring tools. This is quite interesting that when it comes to monitoring, we can even send notification to the operator. So for example, like your reporting is, your report is still splitting, right? You require to split your report in order to process and output as a PDF. So when it comes to splitting, the system can eventually update the operator through email. If it's completed, good luck. If it's having errors arising in the system, it can eventually send out an email to the operator so that the operator can immediately find out what is the root cause and resolve the issue accordingly. So before that, having ERDS, the operator need to, log into the system in order to find out the problem. So meaning the user need to raise up, oh, I cannot see this report. What is the root cause? Then the operator only will go into the system to identify what is the root cause. So it's not efficient in terms of business operation. So we also have other operation monitoring tools like application error or when it comes to report pending processing, which report is still pending, which report is still already processed finished, all will be shown in the log as well as update the operator. So in terms of access right that I just mentioned, you can identify which user group can view, which user group can download, as well as printing. So in terms of security, we have Audilog to trace the so-called who has been accessed to the system. You can also assign the user's right, watermarking, password protection when it comes to accessing to the system, as well as we are using AES 256-bit to encrypt our file so that only people who have the authority to access to the system can only retrieve the document. Lastly, will be single sign-on. So imagine if you have Active Directory, AD, or so-called LDAP, you want to synchronize to your single sign-on so that when next time user want to log into ERDS, you no need to sign in again. You just need to log in one time and you can access to ERDS, to your core, to your other third-party system. We can integrate it as well. And lastly will be retention. As you know that retention, if you want to retention your document as for 1 month, 3 months, 4 months, or even 1 year can be achieved as well. So we also have a backup and restore features. So meaning if you want to restore, when you back up your document, right, or we so-called archive, and in future you want to restore back the old report, it can be achieved as well. And let's talk about template design. So as I mentioned, excuse me. So as I mentioned, we can design the form, right? You can design your own form. You have a logo, you want to have a header, footer, or you want to have a QR code, can be achieved. As you can see, this is a GUI interface. So you're not required to have a IT background. You can eventually design your own form accordingly. These are the tools that you can make use on it. And secondly will be the composition module, meaning in terms after you design the form, you can your spool file can process through the spooler and output the report in a PDF format. So as you can see, you can standardize header, details, and content. So every time when you process your file, it's standardized based on your format. So let's talk about after we talk about the component of the system. Let me give you some case study, right? So that you can better understanding how this system can help. So you may ask, Rudy, when you come to email, right? What if when I send out email, there's a few email, the system has some error. It cannot send out the email. What the system can what the system have in terms of error handling. So to give you a case study, this is what we implement in one of the banks. So what we does is when in terms of sending out email, right? If the email unable to send out through the email server, the report will be stationed in the field folder. So what ERDS does is it have a services to do. You will have a scheduler services to check the field folder. So if, for example, every morning at 8 a.m. I check, field folder got maybe 5 report unable to send through email. So what it does is it will do a retry function. It will retry to send out through the email server so that your report will still able to send out to your customer. So imagine if after maybe numerous of try, after 3 times of trying, it's still unable to send out email. So the ERDS what it will do is it will update the device. It will send out a so-called a status or so-called a reminder to the operator so that the operator can understand that, this email still cannot send after 3 times. So he can eventually access to the system to identify what is the cause. So let's talk about access metrics. As you know, access metrics is quite crucial to identify what user can access, what user group cannot access. So to give you an idea, for example, this is staff and manager level. Both are accessing to the same web portal, but the difference is the staff maybe can access to KL branch and it can only see product A, but for manager, it also access to KL branch, just that it can access to product A, product B, and product C. So these are the access metrics that we are configured. So if you want to segregate by even deeper layer, you want to have like maybe this staff can only see certain reports, this manager can only see multiple reports. We can even segregate up to report group layer. So these are all those customized that we can do for your implementation. And lastly will be the consolidated report. So imagine if you have multiple so-called products that you offer to your customer, and your customer eventually have multiple products require multiple products. To have apply multiple products in your organization. So what you can do is you can use consolidate report services to consolidate your customer report. So for example, your customer have report A or so-called B or credit card statement, and then your customer also have your current account or saving account. What you can do is you can consolidate these two so-called report or statement into a consolidated report, so that in terms of storing, you can store as a single report, so you don't need to store multiple report into your system. And second thing is when you want to send out email, you want to distribute to your customer, you can eventually send out in a single document instead of multiple document. And imagine if your customer have 4 to 5 documents, you can eventually consolidate all 5 documents into a single document in single report and send it out to your client. So let me conclude my presentation. As you can see from having ERDS, you have achieved multiple goals. First is cost saving. In terms of paper consumption, in terms of emailing, you have reduced your paper consumption, because in terms of printing, you only need to print those documents that require, for example, like a contract base. And in terms of business productivity and efficiency, all these are costs because everything has been consolidated into a processing hub, which is ERDS. So everything will be coming into ERDS in terms of troubleshooting, in terms of cost saving, like productivity, all are regarding to cost. So secondly will be enhanced security. You have secure with AES 256B. In terms of compliance, we have audit trail to keep track of what is going on to the system. And if your organization require to have to handle large file report, right, ERDS capable to do to apply this. To achieve it. And in terms of overcome the weaknesses of Windows file server, as you know, when in terms of searching, right, you in Windows you can only search by report name, but in ERDS you can even search by a specific index value, for example, your customer name, your account number, and so on. And we can also improve mobility. You can use a smartphone tablet PC to access. So during the pandemic, if you work from home, you can also access to the system through your home. And lastly will be single point of view, meaning everything every report or so-called state data can be accessed through a single web portal. So you no need to go into multiple web portal. So to end on my slide, so you may ask, Ludi, what is the future, right? After I have ERDS, how can I integrate? Meaning I want to integrate with other system. What is the future perspective? So to give you an idea, AI is the future, right? People will use AI in the future to do analytics, to even come to data mining or machine learning to understand what's their customer needs, what their customer really wants in terms of perspective. So in order to integrate with AI or so-called machine learning, as Garrett just mentioned, you need data. You need tons of data in order to integrate to it, in order to achieve your goals. So imagine if you don't have ERDS, you need to integrate into multiple, you need to integrate to your core in order to extract all this data out. If you have just a file system, maybe okay lah, it's not that hassle. You just need to integrate into file system to extract all this information. But what if you have 50 or 100 of core system in order to retrieve all of the information? That will be quite hassle. And if you miss out something, then it will be troublesome. Then your analytic will not be truthful. But having ERDS already help you to consolidate all this report into a centralized processing hub, meaning in terms of retrieving, in terms of redistributing, everything is you become into this system. So when you want to integrate to machine learning or analytics, it can easily integrate and extract all the information that require in terms of to come up with the dashboard or to analyze your information. So that's all for my presentation. I hope this presentation can give you some insight information for your understanding. So if you have any question, just feel free to ask. My colleague, Mr. Yap, will answer accordingly. Thank you.
Now we'd like to pass the stage to Mr. Yap, our Vice President in Business Development, to answer any questions that you have. Feel free to type your questions in the Q&A tab or even type it in the chat. We have some questions here already. Let me read it out to you, Mr. Yap. How does ERDS integration work with the legacy system?
Okay, for the legacy system, traditionally we will work with their text file or spoof file in the staging area. Meaning to say, the legacy system can push out the text file, metadata with the parameters, so the ERDS can come to the specific logical folder to pull it and then perform the data messaging and template mapping before output to the PDF, desired PDF. This is the traditional way of using the spoof file or text file. Of course, with the current new system, there are other methods like using XML or database like SQL or Oracle, or even the unstructured data using the Hadoop. Also can do the integration from the structured and unstructured data messaging and reporting mapping. It depends on what kind of methodology and protocol enable availability in the customer environment.
Our next question is, other than email and centralized web portal, what are the output possibilities for ERDS?
Okay, beside the portals and email, nowadays customer or agents would like to see the email images via the WhatsApp, Line, or WeChat. Those can be integrated via the API provided by those social provider, or even you can link to the fax. I'm sure fax also start obsolete. WhatsApp or other social media will be another options for the company or organization to reach the report documents or the message to the agents or customer, or even the internal staff.
We have one question here in the chat by Siti Rohani. What is the method to prevent data leakage?
Okay, to prevent the data leakage, okay, first you have to see from which angle you to prevent that layer. First, if you say talk about the transmission, then probably you can, when transmit that from email to the customer or agent, you can use the secure tunnels. Okay, then it's a one layer. Second layer is the output. From the output reach to the customer destination, you can put in the password. So the password can be like PDF with secure password, this one way, or the PDF with the certificate. So to allow the customer or agency, this document is actually from the source. This is the second. The third one, you can put in the 2FA, two factor authentication. before the customer or the agent open the document, you always can request the second token in order the data being leaked or being allowed the outsider to hack into the content. Of course, nowadays the famous one, they're using the blockchain. You can use the blockchain kind of security layer to prevent the data leakage.
We have a few questions here. How long does it take to learn designing a form in Template Designer module?
Okay, traditionally learning curve will be 2 months, but when we do in the project implementation, we always welcome the customer or the partner to join to JV in during the project. Means they will lower down or shorten the learning curve. Within a month, at least the simple design and medium comprehensive can be learned out very fast. So we target 1 to 2 months for the learning curve.
All right, we'll take one last question. When come to sending out email, is ERDS able to integrate with organization's own customer registration portal?
Yep. For the email integration, we also need to see what is the email server. Like the Exchange, we can integrate with the Exchange server via the Microsoft API. Okay. If let's say Lotus or others open source like Gmail and Yahoo or MSN, so we need to see what kind of API we can leverage on. Okay, also depends on what kind of industry. In financial, normally is an Exchange. In retail and others, they are open email. So either you use the IMAP, the SMTP. So we are trying to use SMTP protocol to perform the integration. If really cannot, then we use other third-party tools to perform the integration between the server as well as the client.
All right. I hope all of your questions have been answered. Feel free to type in your further questions in the chat box or in the Q&A tab, or feel free to even email or message Mr. Yap over here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Jihan.
Thank you, Mr. Yap, for answering questions, and thank you to Ludi for giving us that very insightful speech. I will pass over the mic to Hui Mei.
Okay, thank you, Jihan. Coming up, introducing a man known for his unmatchable experience of over 20 years in technology and solutions marketing, and a persistent drive to help customers penetrate the market with technology and solutions. Let us welcome Mr. Andy Pan, Country Manager of PT InfoConnect Solusi Indonesia, to talk about empowering speed to market with Digital Decision Manager.
Hi, good morning and good afternoon. It's me again, right? If you attended the day 1 and day 2, so today is our last day, and my session is the last session again. And thanks, Hui Mei, for that overwhelmed introduction. Yes, I was with InfoConnect for more than 15. I think, it's my 19 years. Yes, in InfoConnect, we always drive to bring in new solutions to the market, right? So today I will share a new solution that we have brought in again to the market for Malaysia and Indonesia, for the financial market, for the manufacturing market, for whichever market that actually requires that you want to have a solution that helps you to create that momentum, that speed to market, to make that changes. And again, COVID-19 have actually pushed us to have that ability to be agile, to make changes to our business rules, make changes to our application. How fast can you do that? Yeah. So I believe that every organization have this same issue when it comes to developing a business system. All right, when business users actually needs to have constant communication with the developer or the vendors whenever they have a business application to build. So sometimes it actually takes a lot of efforts to clearly relate the details to the development team. Right. For example, some development team actually that doesn't knows about the business rules of what application they are building. So those business users need to communicate, detail down all those and relate to them. Now, and the business users does not get to test and verify whatever being developed into the application until it is actually ready for testing. And while testing, there are some not correct, right? So need to revise changes, wrong outcome. So this cycle goes on and on until they actually give you the result that you want. And this development cycle might take a while for that application or business application to be realized, right? Okay. So what we have is we have a solutions that actually can move that development coding into a tools, into a background that you can actually configure those rules inside there. Right. Before I go into further, let me show you a short video about what is this rules.
For an insurance company, the time it takes to launch a new product has been reduced to half. For a major global electronics company, the time it takes to add a new production line to the manufacturing execution system has been reduced by 75%. What brought about these changes? It's all because of the innovations introduced by InfoRules BRMS. Let us explore InfoRules BRMS together. Every business has countless rules. Task policies, standards, regulations, instructions, and capabilities. They are all necessary business rules. However, adapting such rules into an IT system is not easy. Because the business users don't understand the program code in the system, it becomes difficult to create new rules or change existing ones. So, it takes a great deal of time and energy to find the relevant part in a vast amount of program codes and make changes. This can slow down your entire business. InfoRules can streamline the process by separating the rules from the program code and managing them with the independent rules engine. Through Rule Builder, repository, engine for rules, the rule management will be at your fingertips without complex code modifications. This means that business users can write and change the rules by themselves in their language. Since the rules are managed in business language, the IT system development and maintenance will be a lot easier, and of course, there will be less errors. Through InfoRules technology, your enterprise will flourish. Now then, shall we take a look at InfoRules functions? InfoRules BRMS provides an easy-to-use service. Just like any other Office program, it generates business rules through familiar terms in a commonly used UI/UX format. By utilizing tables and flowcharts found in real businesses, it can generate new rules quickly and easily. InfoRules has an easy-to-use test option through the diverse test functions of the Rule Builder. You can develop and test your rules simultaneously in real time. As a company specializing in BRMS, we boast a secure performance and rich experience with high-volume transaction processing systems in diverse fields. Because of this capability, InfoRules is used in core businesses of finance, insurance, manufacturing, and healthcare industries who rely on mission-critical performance system. The following examples of InfoRules customers prove the effectiveness of its technology. Once H Insurance Company introduced InfoRules to their system, the new product launch that initially took 6 months was reduced to 2. The time it took to process claims and audit was shortened to record-breaking numbers. The market share for their new product increased while customer satisfaction improved. The headquarters of S Global Electronics Company was able to manage their production line of 39 factories in 16 different countries through a centralized system while remaining active. They were also able to achieve consistent quality assurance with their products. The ability to solve problems in the processes of the production lines improved tenfold, and the time it took to apply changes of processes also reduced by 75%.
All right, so those are the inner rules, some of the features and some of the benefits, right? So let's take a step back. What is actually business rules to us? Business rule actually includes those business procedure and know-how regarding the policies, regulation, business and work experience that are basis of the business. It actually mostly found in the documents used by the business work. All right. So whenever we need to build an application, so all these business rules actually translate into a document that will be passed on to the developer. Right. So many business rules are actually already reflected in the system that you are using now, and they are also known as knowledge to those people who was in charge. Right. So when business rules are applied to a system, so what they do is they write it into a documentation and then they will translate into the programming language. For example, in this case, in this diagram, they actually translate all those policy regulation into a Java application, right? So those are the coding, and the Java application only will be understood by the developer, right? The business users doesn't get to understand how they write it, how the business rules are being run, right? Therefore, DDM is used to easily apply those business rules and move those business rules out from the development coding. So what we do is those policies, business rules independently of the business application, right? We actually move into the rules repository, and actually will be managed by the rules engine, and there will be some rules management tools that actually can help to manage the version, manage the user rights, manage the changes, all right, and all those performance will be there as well, right? So what will be changed if organization actually move the development of the business rules into using DDM? Let's look into before using DDM, the interpretation and expression of the business rules, right, from the business users to the IT will be actually in programming process. They will actually do the documentation, pass it to them, they will do the programming, and actually takes a long time to communicate with the person in charge of the business and also the IT staff to apply the changes to the program in source code, right? Since it is impossible to confirm the actual content during the transferring of the business rules knowledge, all right? So if the business user have to wait for the programmer, right, to finish programming, and then they will test it. Oh, this is not right. So let's make some changes. Test again. This is not right. Test until it is correct. Whereas if you use DDM, you notice DDM, the business user himself can actually start building the business rules inside using DDM, right? So, and he can also do the testing of all those business rules and the outcome that it actually requires. Once this is done, he actually can ask the developer, okay, my business rules is done. What you need to do is you can actually integrate your front end to my business rules, and I'll put the result into the front end as well. All right, it's that simple. So again, in development, there are actually a few methods, all right, to actually put in the business rules. With the hard coding method, whereas, for example, if you have rules that say if a customer rating is more than or equals to A, and when the user required to change from A to B, so what the programmer need to do is he had to search for all the lines of codes that actually have this business rules, then they will actually change the A to B, right, one by one. Whereas the other method is to use the parameter, where the rules actually refer to the database. The parameter get the codes will get the result, get it from the database, and then when there is a changes or to the parameter, you actually go to the database and make the changes. But if there is a new requirement or new business rules to be added to the lines of codes, the codes need to be changed, and also the database need to add in a few fields to the database table. Whereas if you use DDM, the line of codes is actually calling the API in DDM. Whatever changes, whatever adding of new rules will be done inside DDM. The application front end will actually call the API and actually reflect all those changes from DDM. So you actually make the changes even faster. Now, then you ask, where does this DDM can apply to? All right. So when implementing business rules and managing the DDM, the most effective task is we can define based on the high frequency change, right? Those areas that have changes very frequently, and also how irregular the form of change. The work of business task is actually in this area, area number one, and area 2, where there is a lot of, for example, there is a new product development. They will need to roll out the product within 2 weeks, right? So it's similar to product A, product B, right? How can I roll it out fast? Or product C, which is totally new. So services recommendation or consulting service or fraud detection, there's some changes to it. The new way to detect fraud. How do we make the changes? Those are the areas we can apply immediately. And some in FSI, there might be some process that need calculation, incentive calculation, premium calculation. All those also can be moved, those business rules or the formulas into DDM. Right? Now, these are some of the areas that DDM can apply to, especially in the finance area, where insurance is one of the most useful application that we can use it. Whereas we can use it in the underwriting for new business, calculation of insurance fee, payment review, management of guarantee, calculation of claims, limit of calculation, any rules, we can actually move it out from the back end to be managed inside the DDM easily by the business users. And also in the credit section, credit industry, where you can actually calculate the limit of calculation. And we also can do a simple credit profiling. Based on all the inputs from the front end, we can actually use business rules to actually put in all the credit profiling to profile this applicant quickly. And I can make changes to the profile anytime I want, right? And also in communication, we can also put in all those real-time billing services, where how are we going to respond to some SLA, all right? Based on the question, based on all those, we can also put all those into the policies and handled by DDM, right? Now, let's take a look at the designer. How easy is it to use the DDM Rule Builder? Actually, the UI is actually similar to Excel format, right? And it actually comes with actually 8 kinds of rule template ready to be used. For example, there's this table rule. Immediately, you can actually start building your business rules or your policies, just putting the table as exactly the same as like your Excel worksheet, where you can put in your condition 1, condition, and the outcome, right? You can just put it there. For example, this level S, the score, evaluation score from the input, and then your condition, if it's mid condition more than or equals to 96, then what's the result, all right? And we also, the system also, the builder also comes with the template that is flow chart, right? So user can actually just drag and drop and draw the flow chart exactly the same as being documented in the process flow, right? For example, this flow rule is for the car classification decision rules. You can always duplicate from your document, your process document, and draw it out into rules. And these are the rules that you can easily, the business user can easily relate back to their understanding, right? They can also make changes to it immediately. Now, so rules actually comes with a centralized rule management. Immediately with one login, the user can access to the development server, provided they are given the access rights. They also can access to the test server. They can access to the operation server. So actually, the rules are managed by accessing the development and all this environment, where users, given the rights, they can make changes, deploy to the testing server, run the test, and deploy to the production. And there is also a management tools to actually have approval, review and approval process. Yeah, and also each user login managed by the user permission. Right, groups are created to let the users to do their role. For example, some users are only permitted to make changes to the rules, but they cannot deploy. Yeah, some IT users cannot look at they are not accessible to the rules, but they are the one who deploy to the production. Yeah, so policies and rules can be protected from users, which is not allowed to view those formulas, those ratings. For example, credit profiling. So not the IT users are not allowed to see how they're going to profile the applicant. Right? Those are the business properties, yeah, that must be controlled. Yeah. Now we also have the rules version management. From here, I can create the rates. I can make changes to the rates. For example, February 1st, I want to roll out a new rates for my existing product. So I can make changes to the version, and this version will actually will be kicked off in February 1st. And the new version will kick off, then the old version will be moved back. So if I want to roll back, I can also easily can do through the version control, right? And of course, after you created the rules, the users or the business users are allowed to test immediately, test whatever they have made, test whatever they have configured, and there's a simulation that actually show them, okay, the test result is this, and these are the time taken, right, to process these rules in millisecond, for example. Where is the bottleneck, right? So actually, we really show to the user. And also, if there is multiple version of the rules, there is also a comparison tools to quickly show that version 1 and version 2, where are the changes? What is the difference, right? In terms of the flow chart, in terms of the value. And also each rules are being set can be export out, and then we import back to another system, and all those will be in XML, JSON format, XML format. Yeah. Right. So let me show you a short recorded demo that how this rules actually being configured for this environment, right? Insurance premium calculator. Let's say I have a web application that capture the input about this person, the age, how much you're going to want to invest, all right? What kind of policies is going to take, right? And also there is also an Excel spreadsheet that actually can do the same thing, and also a mobile application that can do the same thing. Just imagine there's these three platforms. If you require to change the rates or change the policy or change the formula calculation, you have to go to the web application and redevelop it. Excel spreadsheet to run the formula macro again. Mobile application, you need the mobile developer to run the application development again, then deploy it again. So what we have done is we move those formula and rates out from the three platform, right? And we move it into DDM. The configuration, the setup, the version, all will be done in DDM. Okay, let me show you this demo.
Hello, in this session, I will show you a quick run-through demo on how to send data from front end to Infosphere Rule Builder and how Infosphere Rule Builder can process and calculate the values based on the rules defined in the rules server and return it back to the front end. Let's start from the front end. What you are seeing right now, we have a simple web page built using ASP.NET. For your information, this can be built by using another different language or technologies or frameworks like PHP or JavaScript. But for these versions, we are using ASP.NET. The idea is the input controls that is provided here, like entry age, policy term, basic sum assured, later on is constructed into a JSON format and send it to Infosphere Rule Builder, and Infosphere Rule Builder will process based on the rules defined in the rule server and return it back to the front end. The front end will display the result into this below grid, the basic premium plan samples and also cash value tables. Right now we have the input controls predefined. Entry age is 20, policy term is 10 years, basic sum assured is 100 million. Let's see what happens if we click the calculate button. After we click the calculate button, the basic premium values for annual, semi-annuals, quarterly, and monthly is now changed. Each have a new values which is calculated from the Infosphere Rule Builder, and also the cash values. Now we have some values returned from the server and displayed on the grid below. The next part is Infosphere Rule Builder itself. What you are seeing right now is Infosphere Rule Builder tools. These tools is used for creating specific rules like business rules or calculations purpose rules. The data is sent from the front end through Infosphere Web API in a JSON format. The data later consumed by specific rules and returned back in also JSON format. In Infosphere Rule Builder tools, we can create rules and put it in a specific folder. This can help us to classify which of the rules that is related to a specific subject. As you can see right now, I have several folders like products and sub-rule. Inside of the folders, it consists all of the rules related to the subject. Now let's take a look at one of the rules inside of the Infosphere Rule Builder tools. What you are seeing right now is the basic premium rules which is used by the front end in earlier demo. Inside of this rule, we have several columns like annual, semi-annual, quarterly, and monthly, each of the columns uses round functions. These functions and formulas is based on the formulas that is created earlier and also based on the functions that is registered by default in InfoRules Rule Builder tools. So we have math functions, we have date functions, we have string functions, and other related functions, which is similar to Excel. In InfoRules Rule Builder tools, it has user and role management controls. It allows specific users to access specific modules based on the roles applied. InfoRules Rule Builder tools provide us with versioning feature. This feature allows us to create duplication of current versions, or we can roll back current versions to the old versions. Like you see from this one specific rules, which is rate table rules, we have two different versions. The first one is the current versions, dated back to 2020. And the second one is the old versions, dated back to 2019. Now let's take a look on how easy to change the values from inside InfoRules. So earlier in the demo, we put 20 as the insert entry age. Now we are going to change the rate by age values from 31.06 to 131. So we can get the reg changes. As you can see right now, the old basic premium values are like this. And then we recalculate by clicking the calculate button. Now the values increase because we have changed the rate by age values directly from InfoRules. So the changes applied immediately. To wrap this up, I will show you two of the most useful features provided by the InfoRules Rule Builder tools, which are test and tracking features. These features allows us to do testing from inside InfoRules. So we don't need to use external tools to do testing or tracking tests. For example, I have input similar like the demo earlier, basic sum assured, policy term, and insert entry age. By clicking the test button, the result will be shown on the right panel. The annual, semi-annual, quarterly, monthly values is now displayed the same as displayed in the earlier demo. And also we can do tracking tests. By clicking the tracking button, we can see which functions are called by the main functions or the related functions. The main functions here are basic premium. It's calling the basic premium annual and also calling the basic premium semi-annual and so on. And we can also see the related called functions like rate by age and extra mortality. And you can also see how much time does each functions run. Like this one, it only runs for about 1 millisecond. This part only runs about 1 millisecond, or in total maybe around 2 milliseconds. And also you can see directly the result on the right panel. There's so much more you can do with InfoRules product. I hope this demo session can give you basic knowledge and understanding on how InfoRules product can improve your business operations and enhance your business agility. I really appreciate your time. Thank you. Goodbye.
I hope you get an idea, a brief idea how InfoRules can do, can help you to quickly deploy your new products or the rules into your business application. So to wrap this up, these are some of the benefits, right? That if you implement DDM for the business users, the integrated management of policies and business know-how will be actually managed and transferred into DDM. right? They can immediately or they can directly do the changes themselves. So they do not need to do transfer the knowledge to the IT staff and then wait for them to complete and do the testing. Then they can actually separate the business rules from those programming codes, and they can also protect their business rules by not allowing the IT staff to know how they're going to do this profiling of credit application, right? And also they can have a unified view between IT and business groups. They can always make changes anytime they want, right? By changing those rates and deploy it. And for the IT staff, it's actually a powerful, very powerful test features for them to easily deploy any new changes to the system. So what they will focus on is they will focus on the front end and also the output side. Whatever business rules, right, a complicated side will be set by the business users in DDM, right? Okay. Now, these are some of the users back in Korea. You can see that rules are widely used in the FSI area, in the insurance area. And rules is actually is a prerequisite of the business rules for the insurance side. And we also have another product called product, which is actually specially built for the insurance market, which I will not show over here. If you have any interest on that, please let us know. We will actually do a demo on the product to you, right? And of course, in the financial, the banking side for credit profiling, for cards and security, we have the onboarding, and also for manufacturing, they actually put in all those policies for the formulas of the products into rules so that they can manage it across all their branches, across the branches in other countries as well, right? And that wraps up my presentation on rules. All right, thank you for staying with us. And I will open up for questions if there is any. Back to you, Jihan or Hui Ming.
Okay, thanks Andy for the presentation. Now on to Q&A session. Let's look at the questions that we have. Okay, first one, how do you connect to InnoRules DDM?
All right, actually, InnoRules DDM has an API. So what we do is the application that you build call the API of InnoRules. And InnoRules will return the result in JSON format, and the front-end application will actually post it back to as an output.
All right. Okay. Next one, what front-end programming language is supported by InnoRules DDM?
Any programming language that support calling of API, for example, Java, C, C++, C#, or .NET, we actually allows them to call an API actually supported by DDM, InnoRules DDM.
All right, hope that answers. Is there any form deployment process with approval from the administrator or business owner?
Oh, yes. In InnoRules, we have the user management, right, that allows each user have their own role. So for example, the business user will have the role of just making changes to the business rules, but they are not allowed to deploy it immediately. So it actually goes through the administrator or goes to the higher level superior manager to review the changes and also to approve the changes. So we have the review and approval process in InnoRules for the rule version control.
Okay, that's all for the questions that we have. If you all have still have any other questions on this DDM, please post your questions in the Q&A. Okay, so probably we can wrap things up first. Then if we have further questions, then we can discuss after we can attend to it after the end of this event.
Okay.
Since we have already run, it's already 12:13 now.
Yeah, lunchtime again, yeah.
Mhm. Okay, back to you, Jihan.
Yeah, Tian,
Mm.
thanks.
Jihan can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Huime, and thank you to Andy for enlightening us with not only the benefits but also the endless applications of Digital Decision Manager and also inner rules. Now we'd like to wrap up. That wraps up our day two of MFIC 2021. We thank you wholeheartedly for being part of this event and hope to see you for any of our other events. We hope that you enjoyed your time with us and learned a thing or two along the way. We do encourage you to stay behind for a short while to ask our speakers any questions you have before we adjourn. Once again, thank you for all your support and sure to stay safe during this pandemic. And until next time, take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. See you at the next event.
If anyone would like to ask any questions pertaining the all the solutions that have been shared yesterday and today, feel free to type it in the Q&A tab in the bottom or even type it in our chat box and we'll be happy to answer you any questions.